It has been 2 years since development of Metroid Prime 4 restarted with Retro Studios at the helm, and considering this is a long-awaited entry in my favorite game trilogy of all time, my expectations are sky high. I hope this game lives up to the legacy of the Prime trilogy, and of course, the Metroid series as a whole. And to get more specific, I have 10 hopes for Metroid Prime 4 that, if implemented, could result in the greatest game of all time. Or at least the greatest Metroid game of all time. Let's get into it. That's right, Samus should only be exploring one planet in Metroid Prime 4. There's already been multiple planet exploration in Metroid Prime 3 and Hunters, and it was pretty cumbersome having to fly between planets over and over again. Although in Prime 3's defense, we did get Alicia's Sky Town, which still looks gorgeous to this day. However, unless Retro Studios finds a way to make travel between planets seamless, Metroid Prime 4 should only be set on one planet. A planet filled with diverse locales, each with their own themes. You know, like every other Metroid game set on one planet. Especially Talon 4, which looked like a barren husk until you visited areas like the Talon Overworld and Phendrana Drifts. Wow, we really only saw one side of the planet in space, didn't we? And that just goes to show how one planet won't make Metroid Prime 4 feel limited in its scope. It all depends on the creativity of the team making this game. And most importantly, being set on a single planet would only make the world feel more interconnected, just like the first Metroid Prime. You would still have the diverse biomes of Prime 3, just without the cumbersome travel system. Since this is the first original Metroid game in a long time, it's important that Retro Studios try new things while also sticking to the roots of what makes the series special. And I believe being set on a single planet is one of the most important conventions of Metroid. Have Samus explore unfamiliar territory, encountering new enemies and making discoveries, only entering her ship to refill health and ammunition. Now, if they found a way to nail traveling between multiple planets, then I wouldn't be against that. But for now, I want them to play things a little safe and give us only one great planet to explore. And speaking of exploration, backtracking is part of the Metroid experience, but there's still a right way and a wrong way to do it. And as much as I love the first Metroid Prime, the backtracking during the Chozo Artifact quest still irritates me to this day. Fortunately, this was remedied in Metroid Prime 2 with better placed shortcuts and a warp system when you got the light suit. And as much as I didn't enjoy the planet hopping in Prime 3, the ship still served as a great tool to quickly get between areas. It was just tiring having to watch or skip through the same cutscenes multiple times. Also, Samus Returns introduced teleport stations, which made traversing through the massive planet a heck of a lot easier. I'm sure Metroid Prime 4 will have something akin to fast travel, but not to the point where it will completely eliminate the need for backtracking. If anything, Samus could use her ship to fly around the planet, kind of like how it worked in Metroid Prime 3, but hopefully way faster by getting rid of those cutscenes. We don't need to see it take off every time. Metroid is all about isolation. Whenever Samus is on a mission, she goes it alone. And it's always her against a planet filled with creatures who want nothing but to wear her as a Samus suit. The last few Metroid games, save for Samus Returns, haven't exactly nailed that isolating atmosphere the series is known for.
Remember me?
Which is why when I boot up Metroid Prime 4 and hit that start button, I want to feel that cold, dead silence of whatever planet or facility I just landed on. Now, it doesn't have to begin with a destroyed facility covered in dead bodies, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. The first Metroid Prime is my favorite example of isolation in video games, opening up with the abandoned frigate Orpheon that sets the tone for the rest of the game. Each area of Talon 4 reeks of a fallen civilization, and you can just feel the loneliness through the visuals and the music. If the new staff at Retro Studios needs some inspiration on an isolating atmosphere, I hope they've played Metroid Prime at least twice. So this might conflict a little bit with the last hope I had, but I am not against spoken dialogue in Metroid Prime 4 at all. there just needs to be a healthy balance. In the case of Metroid Prime 3, and especially Other M, the amount of voice acting compromised that isolating feel. However, I think there's a way Retro Studios can nail that isolating atmosphere while also including voiced dialogue. Remember those logbook entries you'd read after scanning some lore? Well, what if they were voiced? Kind of like the audio tapes from BioShock, which you can listen to as you keep playing. Not every logbook entry would be voiced, but some of them would be if they were messages left behind by people who've died or gotten lost. Imagine if the dead Galactic Federation troopers from Metroid Prime 2 left behind audio logs you could listen to. Wouldn't that just be fascinating and haunting? Having this feature in Metroid Prime 4 could also add to the immersion. Now, would Samus herself talk? Possibly, as long as she continues to be voiced by Jennifer Hale. But seriously, she could probably begin the game with a mission report or end the game with a mission complete message. With the exception of Other M, Samus hasn't been the most talkative character, but she hasn't always been a silent protagonist either. So I'm down for whatever Retro Studios thinks is okay. The open world genre has taken the industry by storm, but I don't think Metroid is ready to make that transition just yet. Since it's been an incredibly long time since we've seen a 3D Metroid, I would rather they stick with the traditional 3D level design for Prime 4, filled with tight corridors, big rooms filled with enemies, and the occasional large area that shows off the beauty of the graphics engine, because you just gotta have that. That doesn't mean the game will be limited in scope, however, as demonstrated by games like Uncharted and the newest Tomb Raider trilogy, the latter of which is a great example of AAA Metroidvanias. These games did not have to be open world to feel grand and epic. If anything, Metroid Prime 4 would have larger environments than previous entries, or even open world hubs similar to Pokemon Sword and Shield's wild areas. Retro Studios can get really creative with the level design here, but it wouldn't surprise me if they decided to go with the open world route. I don't see how Metroid can work in an open world environment yet, but if anyone can prove me wrong, it's the staff at Retro. I know this is bound to cause some controversy, but I strongly believe that Metroid Prime 4 should have an online multiplayer mode. If it doesn't, I'm not going to complain, but it could seriously help Metroid reach out to a broader audience. An audience that plays Halo or even Doom. The only competitive online mode the series has had was from Metroid Prime Hunters from 15 years ago, and it was good. Metroid Prime 2 also had a fun local multiplayer mode that I spent hours upon hours playing with my friends. And obviously, Federation Force had online co-op, so the franchise is no stranger to multiplayer at all. In my opinion, Metroid Prime 4 should have an online multiplayer component complete with character customization, a wide array of maps, and a leveling system. If done right, it could be the flagship online shooter for the Nintendo Switch, or the next Nintendo platform if the game comes out on that as well. Now, if I were to imagine how matches would go down, it would work Halo style, where everyone starts out with the same loadout and can pick up other weapons and power-ups on the map. It's similar to Metroid Prime 2, only with more than 4 players. Again, if Retro Studios would rather devote their resources to an amazing single-player story, that would be great. But the sales of Metroid Prime 4 could benefit from a robust online multiplayer. The Metroid Prime trilogy is famous for pushing the technology of the GameCube and the Wii, and Metroid Prime 4 should be no exception. Heck, aside from a 480p resolution, the Prime trilogy still looks great to this day. Prime 4 should have a timeless art direction, one that combines an exotic style with grounded realism. It wouldn't surprise me if this turned out to be the best looking Nintendo game yet. I mean, Retro Studios hired an art director who worked on Battlefield 5 and Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Clearly, they're aiming for this game to look good. However, this raises the question of if the Nintendo Switch is powerful enough to support a game that will look as good as Metroid Prime 4. Nintendo's first-party games tend to be the best-looking and best-running games on their own hardware, but we're seeing even now that the first-party games are having some problems. This is why I and many others have theorized that this will also come out on the heavily rumored Nintendo Switch Pro, though not as an exclusive to the upgraded hardware. If anything, packing this game in with the Switch Pro would offer an additional incentive to buy both. This is just speculation though, and I'm sure Metroid Prime 4 will look and run great on the Nintendo Switch, be it Pro or not. Just please make it 60 frames per second again, please. Metroid games are all about finding new gear to help you get past certain obstacles and fight enemies. But when you get these items like missiles and plasma beams, they remain unchanged for the rest of the game. So, what if we could upgrade them, like giving them greater damage or increasing their fire rate? You can do this in games like BioShock and the new Tomb Raiders. I know Metroid is not a series focused entirely on combat, but you do fight a lot of enemies that respawn when you go back to certain rooms. So it would be beneficial if these monsters were easier to kill as you went on. And while we're changing how weapons and gear work, why not actually decide on the order you get them? Without sequence breaking, of course. Though it would be nice if they brought that back, but think of a Link Between Worlds, where you could select which tool you wanted to progress. This wouldn't be the case for every piece of gear, since finding them is part of the fun, but it could work for a few of them, such as choosing between the screw attack or the gravity suit. Just an idea. It would also provide additional incentive for exploring. Theoretically, if you were to upgrade your gear, you would have to find some form of currency or an item, and these would be hidden throughout the planet. It would be great to find these more often instead of yet another missile expansion. Speaking of which, I'm just gonna say it. There are way too many missiles in Metroid games. There is no greater disappointment than solving an intricate puzzle only to be rewarded with yet another missile expansion. And don't even get me started on the gunship missile expansions in Metroid Prime 3. Talk about useless. Perhaps Retro can remedy this issue by making missile expansions worth more, including the currency I mentioned that upgrades weapons, and maybe don't even include expansions as a reward for puzzles sometimes. Maybe puzzles can unlock more shortcuts, additional lore, and hints that help you solve other puzzles throughout the game. It would be more creative and would diversify the amount of rewards you can get as a result. And if we're talking about puzzles, let's look at the ones in Breath of the Wild. A lot of them were unique for Zelda since they were physics-based. Maybe Metroid Prime 4 could incorporate a similar style with its puzzles, allowing players to get creative and come up with their own solutions instead of only one. It would be really cool. Chances are we're going to see a lot of items and creatures from previous Metroid games return in Prime 4. But what I really want to see return are some of the big baddies, the bosses, Samus's biggest rivals that aren't named Ridley. Sorry man, maybe in Metroid Prime 5, because it's time for some other characters to make a return. For example, we haven't seen Kraid since Zero Mission, and that was a remake of the first game, and he was about to be in Metroid Prime before being cut. And no, Nintendo Land's Metroid Blast doesn't count, though it did present some good ideas, like Kraid coming out of a pit of lava. That would be awesome. Still, Kraid got more of a spotlight than Crocomire got after Super Metroid. That poor kid, he got pushed over the edge. I don't doubt Metroid Prime 4 is going to have more original bosses than returning ones, but it would be cool to see icons like these return in Prime 4. And if the end credit scenes of Metroid Prime 3 and Federation Force are anything to go by, then we're going to see Sylux from Prime Hunters make a triumphant comeback. Personally, I would love to see a new version of Quadraxis from Metroid Prime 2. It was a really creative boss and super intimidating at that. I mean, look at how big it is. It's massive. However, there is another villain we haven't even seen in a 3D Metroid game, and that is Mother Brain. We saw tidbits of her in Other M, but only her monstrous form in the opening scene. She could be the main threat in Metroid Prime 4, or even the rest of this new trilogy, assuming it'll turn into a trilogy. Retro Studios could make Mother Brain feel more scary and menacing than ever before, and I hope they find a way to do just that. And those are my 10 hopes for Metroid Prime 4. Do you think any of these will come true? Do you have any hopes or wishes of your own? Let me know in the comment section down below, and subscribe to Game Explain for more videos on Metroid. Until next time everyone, bye.